The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. This is Travis Miller. I'm going to be your moderator for today's webcast. Just know that our webcast is going to be starting here shortly, and we're just waiting for a few other people to get signed in. While you wait, if you'd like to register for any of our other free JDE educational webcasts, you can do so by going out to our website at getgsi.com/webcasts. And again, we're going to be starting here shortly. Thank you. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. First off, I want to thank all of you all for joining us for today's webcast. The topic for today is going to be 10 questions to ask before using cloud services. So here's our safe harbor statement. Let's take a quick review of this. So my name is Travis Miller, and I'm a client development manager here at GSI. I'm also going to be your MC for today's webcast. And today's main presenter is going to be John Bassett. John is our Executive Vice President of Managed Services. And a quick background on John. John has over 25 years, 30 plus years actually, of experience working with J.D. Edwards. And this constitutes managing implementations, helping with upgrades, business process redesign, and much, much more. He's well known throughout the industry, presenting at numerous industry conferences, as well as webcasts such as today. So here's today's agenda. We've gone through introductions. We're going to go over a brief housekeeping, followed by a general company overview. Then we'll get into the presentation itself. Today's presentation is going to be a little bit faster than normal. We're looking at about 30 minutes. Then we're going to cover upcoming GSI events, and then we will wrap up with a Q&A session. So if you'd like to submit a question, you can do so by going to the questions panel. And this is located at the bottom of the GoToWebinar console window, located on the right side of your screen. Please note that questions will be answered at the end of this presentation. So if you'd like to minimize your GoToWebinar console during the presentation, just click the right-facing arrow key on the top left of the console, and clicking the left arrow key will return the console so that you can input any questions that you may have. So here's a brief overview of our company. GSI is a full-service J.D. Edwards consulting organization. We're an Oracle Platinum partner that was founded in 2004 and now have over 100 employees. We have offices nationwide and are recognized on the Inc. 5000 list of fastest growing companies within the U.S. GSI specializes in project consulting, managed services, and this is along with our cloud and hosting services. Now, in addition to this, we're also a product development company that have many popular products with our clients, and this includes the following. So to start off with, our software agnostic applications include Genius and Genesis. So Genius is our advanced monitoring and performance analytics solution, and this works for any business critical system on any platform. We also have Genesis, which is our load and stress testing application for system design, validation, or expansion that can be used on any web-based critical system as well. Next, we jump into the J.D. Edwards applications, and to start off with, we have G Shield. And G Shield is GSI's two-factor authentication and password reset solution for J.D. Edwards. Next, we have Rapid Reconciler, and Rapid Reconciler is GSI's Oracle validated tool for J.D. Edwards inventory in transit and receive not vouchered reconciliation solution. And this works on any version of E1 or World. And let's see here. And then next for our Salesforce applications, we have Rapid Approval. And this is a configurable application for quickly processing workflow approval requests within Salesforce. And now I'd like to turn this over to today's main presenter, John Bassett.
Thanks, Travis. How's it going today?
It's going well. How are you?
Good. Okay, let's get things started and see how it looks. All right, can you see everybody see the screen?
I can see it just fine. Yep. You're good to go.
All right, let's get started then. Thanks, everybody. Welcome to today's webcast. 10 questions to ask before using cloud services. This is an interesting topic because historically, everybody's software systems have been local, hosted in a data center that you have control of. But now with some of the advantages and cost savings, speed, performance, agility, and all that, many companies are thinking, maybe there are, reasons that we should consider picking up our application and having somebody else host the physical hardware. Might be for some of these reasons, CapEx versus OpEx could be a big cost savings. If you're a brand new company and you didn't have a big data center anymore, and you're faced with multi-million dollars building a new raised floor, heating, cooling, and all that, it very much can make sense. Also, application availability and human resource availability can also mean a big difference. One of our largest cloud clients has an on-staff team that are perfectly capable of managing the network, managing the servers, and managing their applications. However, they had to add about 50 machines, and they didn't have the staff for that. They added a database application. They didn't have the DBA, so we kind of work along side by side to help them get through the the push. So if it's long term, they may end up hiring, or as people retire, they may end up turning services back over to us. So saying that your objectives of moving to the cloud are important isn't enough. You need to investigate how important are these outcomes to the success of your business. Are they all equally important, or can you rank them? Is the items, I only have 4 items up on the screen, but how important are they, and which one is the most important to you? The real test of importance is the resources that you're willing to allocate to achieve the objectives, and those resources consist of time, money, and the effort that you're willing to put into it. So another question is what are your SLAs, your RPO and your RTO? What is included with your SLA? Are these definitions defined? How do you handle an infraction, and how would you handle remediation? That's that can be a real stickler. Let me give you an example. Your SLA is your service level agreement. How quickly will your service provider respond? What is considered acceptable to you? RPO and RTO are your recovery point objective and your recovery time objective. Those need to be established in advance. RPO is your recovery point objective, meaning how much data can you afford to lose, like the last hour, the last 4 hours, or none. Maybe perhaps it's none. Recovery time objective would be, well, how long can you be down? Can you afford to be down for an hour, 4 hours? And you need to establish those ahead of time. Of course, the lower those RPO and RTO are, is the more money you're going to spend to make their availability. If you can, some people will tell us, well, I can't afford to lose anything. I say, well, that's not realistic, because there's a high probability that you're at least going to lose the things that your people were working on. They may midstream entering transactions, and it's usually not even wise to even try to figure out how to recover a mid transaction, because they'll have to, you never know if it's even good. So you'd have to rolling back to the last transaction that you entered is definitely feasible. So your SLAs can be narrow, they can be broad. Check with your provider you're considering to make sure that the SLA meets your need. The definitions, they can help you or they can hurt you. Are those definitions publicly available, and do they leave loopholes that could harm you? Good example. Let's say a system goes down at 1 o'clock in the morning, and then your people come in at 7 a.m. and they find that the system is not working. Does your SLA start at 1 o'clock in the morning, or does your SLA start when it's first recovered at 7 a.m.? Those are the type of things you need to define and have well covered up front, because it could make the difference for your business succeeding or not succeeding. And you'd think that SLAs would be straightforward, because they're basically about numbers. But again, how are they measured and how often? And it would be nice if all SLAs were upheld all the time. But what do you do if you encounter an infraction? Do you have a root cause analysis thing in advance? Do you have some kind of financial recourse for an outage? Typically, the architecture of a system will be defined in like how much uptime you have, like 99.99. And some people will say, well, how many nines do you go out to? And that's one thing you need to check. How will they handle remediation? It's a very good question to ask. Is tell me about your remediation, your root cause analysis. Are you going to have a team? You're going to have a team director, somebody that manages an outage, get a bridge conference going. So, and you do need to know, when does the SLA clock begin to tick? Another concept is multi-tenancy. Cloud providers tend to like to put you on shared infrastructure, meaning they have one big compute space, and they'll have some kind of hypervisor with it. So most of that equipment's going to be virtual. Not necessarily, though. You can negotiate physical hardware in certain circumstances, or bare metal, as some people like to refer to it. But not all applications, will work on infrastructure. At the beginning of the webcast, Travis mentioned that I've got a lot of JD Edwards experience. And JD Edwards was not written to be multi-tenant, and in some cases it doesn't work real well. And we're finding that many of our clients that are seeing trouble, they roll back to physical architecture, and many of their problems go away. So you need to look into whether your application, whatever it is, does it require dedicated infrastructure? It still can reside in the cloud, but you might be faced with going with a managed cloud provider versus a pure cloud provider like AWS or Azure. A couple other questions in the multi-tenant situation that you need to know is, can you decline a proposed outage? When you're multi-tenant, it becomes less and less in your control. You might not want to deal with an outage because your business doesn't like it, but if there's 50 other clients to the hosting provider that need to have that fix put into place, so they're going to give you a certain amount of warnings, and they're going to go ahead and do it anyway. So you need to be check on your ability to decline an outage. This is a big one that I've spent a lot of time talking about. Is your cloud solution secure? So our I've had arguments, and I actually did a counterpoint with a peer where I represented the on-premise folks and he represented the cloud provider. And one of the questions that came up from the audience was, I understand you're saying that security shouldn't be a concern. You said, but if it's on my premises, I can just unplug the wire to the internet, and then nothing's going to get in, and I can still continue to run. And there's some truth to that, but what's realistically, how are you going to go click the cable before it's too late or not? My opinion is that cloud providers, specifically the managed services providers, not the pure clouds, not the Oracle, not the Amazon. Out of the box, you don't get that provided for you. But the managed hosting providers like Secure24 and PCM, they have dedicated security experts. I met with the president of Secure24 last week. They're a managed hosting partner of GSI's, and he said they have over 60 security professionals on staff, and they take on nation attacks. 60% of their business is public sector, with all countries like North Korea coming and trying to hack their system. And they have, how many companies that you talk to have 60 security professionals? Maybe some very large companies can afford to do it, but certainly not the smaller companies. You'd be fortunate to even have just one. So the fact that your system is configured and designed up front before it's even installed to be secure with experts is a very good sign. So the question is, you want to ask is your data safe? Ask about the cloud provider. It's like, what kind of security practices do you have in place? I just gave you Secure24's, but now you need to find out from the others. Is your data safe? Who has access to your data? Who's responsible for your data? Are you responsible for it, or are they responsible? So, and then the next question is when you're going to be monitoring your system, and are those monitors safe as well? So just things to look for. Another question is how do you streamline operations, and should you outsource? It's one thing if your system on premise and you maintaining it. So you have a couple questions there. It's like, should I keep my equipment? But not only should I keep my equipment, but should I manage it myself? And if you decide you don't want to keep your own equipment, but you might want to manage it yourself, then a pure cloud provider might be a good solution. But you want to maybe you can do it all, but should you? You'll have to ask those questions. What things can you automate outside your four walls? You might know what you'd like to automate, but what level of outside automation will the provider allow? And does that jive with what you have planned? Also have to consider is your APIs, your exposing your applications. They'll need to be addressed. They might work perfectly fine inside your four walls, but now that you have to go into a data center might be different. Do you have the in-house development to handle it, or will you need help with a contractor? Also, remember, not all applications can be migrated seamlessly to the cloud. Take a good look. Have you written any of your applications for a specific orchestration platform, or are they vendor specific in some way? If so, you'll need to rewrite your applications to move to the new cloud platform. Or does the cloud service provider use its own APIs? You may need to find an expert. GSI, for instance, is an expert in migrating ERP applications. That's what our roots are. We're technical, and we were technical in our founding. We're functional in nature now as well, but we help people figure out how to migrate. And then the biggie: what is your business continuity plan? 10 years ago, when we first started down with cloud providers, a lot of people weren't so worried about their business continuity plan, which is a bad thing. And for most people, it's a bad thing. But going to the cloud, it's just, by design, there's going to be some form of a business continuity plan. And we talked about RPO and RTO and how long you can, how long you can be out. Cloud solution providers vary across the map on their stance towards business continuity and disaster recovery. We have a couple of partners. One partner that whether or not somebody pays for DR for safety reasons, they replicate no matter what. So you're getting DR even if you don't pay for the activity. Another provider doesn't automatically set it up. You have to pay extra for it, but they also actually don't set it up until you have. So you need to know what stance they are. Business continuity and disaster recovery both. And remember, resiliency isn't graded as pass-fail. It's graded on a curve. So examine the primary cloud environment you're considering carefully, and how would you grade its resiliencies. Some companies are comfortable with one DR facility. Others want multi-facilities. Only you know what's right for you. You need to ask the cloud service provider how many facilities are available for DR and where are they located. Most of the managed cloud providers have 2 or 3, and but some of the larger hosting providers, such as Amazon and Azure, they have dozens or if not hundreds of data centers. The other thing is disasters are a matter of when, not if, and hopefully it's when they do occur, they're minor. So when a disaster hits, how do you want recovery handled? Do you want automated recovery, or do you want manual recovery? The difference being, of course, the cost that you have to spend up front. If you automate DR, it's going to cost quite a bit more up front. Maybe you don't have that in budget. Automated recovery tends to go a little smoother and a little faster, because all you do is click a button and away she goes. You have to, somebody has to call a DR event, though. You don't want it to happen without somebody specifically stating we have a disaster. So you need a disaster declaration as well. So back to SLAs for a moment. Be sure to probe your cloud service provider on SLAs for your RPO and RTO, and will they meet your need? Then there's risk governance and compliance. What do you have? Are you do you work with the Department of Defense? One of our clients works very closely with Verizon, and they are not allowed to have any foreign nationals. So ITAR's any non-domestic resources looking at their data. So those are ITAR requirements, HIPAA, HR requirements, but there's several others. There's PCI compliance for credit card processing. Some also require SOC reporting as well. Those are just things you need to check on. I've got some, the buzzwords down below: Sarbanes-Oxley, just all things you need to check with. If you're with the Food and Drug Administration, you have 21 CFR Part 11 you have to be worried about as well. So, you need to take these all one at a time. You need to look at the governance and become comfortable with it. You've got to define your requirements. Do they sync up? There's no gray area when it comes to adhering to compliance standards, but you need to find out how your CSP adheres to those compliances. You also need to be concerned about who owns the processes. and it can be defined. Who owns the data that goes into the cloud? Who owns the infrastructure? In ownership, who has the right to order additional services? So keep that in mind. They're going to have to document. Don't forget about controls. Are they in place in the cloud that you're considering to make sure that you'll be compliant? And if they're not, you need to make sure that it's flexible enough that you can install your own. Now back to the implementation itself. It's like who's gonna perform the migration? Will you be performing the migration, or will it be a shared effort? If the migration will be shared effort, would you like the provider? You'll have to define what you want them to do and what you would like to do. You're going to have to ask them about the data migration process. Ask up front. Do they allow you the importation of virtual machines, or will the migration require you to move the data and applications to new machines, synchronize and fail over in stages? And GSI has been a part of several processes like that. If you're moving from one provider to another, you have to be concerned about proprietary operations. For instance, we have one client that didn't like their service provider, so they were moving to another, and the one they were going to is perfectly capable of migrating the virtual machines, but the source provider said, no, there's too many proprietary processes on those VMs. We won't allow it. It's in the contract that we cannot give them the VMs, and that slows down the process dramatically, especially if you're moving from one provider to another. So get that up front. Find out who owns the VMs. Does the cloud provider own the VM, or do you own the VM? If you might, in some cases, you might want to say, well, I'm using a stock Windows 2012 instance, but how could that be proprietary? And they'll give you many reasons, like, well, there's licensing of the operating system. We've installed our own monitors on there. So find out if there's a way to get to a common point where they can, where they could give you a VM to move. Otherwise, you're going to have to stage the build. You're going to have to rebuild and then migrate the data. We also find that we help our clients replicate data, because you need to, not only do you have to set up the system, but you're still using your current system while you're getting things set up. So you're going to have to update the data. How you're going to go about doing that? Is it a lift and shift? You're just going to, you're going to do a tape backup and carry the tape. You're going to do an over-the-wire copy of the final data, or you're going to do something sophisticated like implement a replication strategy. You can replicate, and also keep in mind you have to worry about replicating file shares, and also at the database you're going to have to assess where is your data. So another thing is, if you're going to need migration assistance, don't be shy to ask for proof that they've done it before. They do it on a daily basis. What is their success rate for meeting contractual obligations? How long does their typical project take from the time you just push the button to go? Is it a 4-week project? Is it a 6-week project? Is it a 6-month project? In fact, you should ask for the ask the CSP for documentation up front. Can they give you a comprehensive SOW in advance for you to review to show all the components? Now, they might not want to provide that to you because they'll say, well, that's our proprietary information. If you go with us, we'll certainly provide that with you, but get as much as you can. And just keep in mind, they're probably not going to give you a detailed checklist for you to go do it yourself. They're going to be a little careful in giving that to you. And remember, migrations, they never go without some kind of a hiccup. So you just be prepared. There's probably going to be some kind of a hiccup that you're going to hit a stumbling block that's going to cause you a week's delay. Can the provider give you their procedures for change orders as well during the migration? Don't forget about termination clauses. Sometimes you try to make a move and it just does not work out. There's time when you have to say goodbye. If it does come, who can terminate the service under what conditions? What is sufficient to terminate service? Do you require a phone call, an email, or does it have to be written notice? Never make assumptions where money is concerned. If service is terminated, you need to know when billing will cease. Just because you terminate a service doesn't mean that the data just goes away. What happens to your data when the services terminate? How do you get your data out? So you need to think about that. Are they going to scrub the VMs? And if you have compliance obligations, you might need to negotiate that in advance. Say, we require XYZ protocol for scrubbing VMs. So those are things you need to discuss. How will they be moved to the new tenant? So just keep it. And this last one on the screen is very important. Make sure you have cooperation. Put it in writing. We're not afraid to put it in writing. If for some reason it doesn't work out, we'll shake hands and we'll cooperate. And you need to make sure that you have a cooperation, because we've run into that before. Once you announce we're leaving, several places, that's the end of it. They're done talking to you. Like, oh well, I'm not going to lose money, not going to make money. They'll start following the contract very closely, and you might find it very difficult to make the move. So from the time you decide to make a move from one provider to another, assuming you're not going from on-premise, you wait until you're darn close to making the move to announce that. Just unless you're certain you've got a good relationship. You need to discuss with them you knew we'd be talking about money sooner or later, right? Ask some good questions up front, such as, are there any capital expenditures, or is it all operational expense? You need to talk about things like cloud bursting. You need to understand, the billing model. Is it a utility model? How is it calculated, and in what increments? Many people assume that the cloud is automatically cheaper than what you're using now, but you might want to double check. Calculate your costs. If you've already paid for a data center and you don't have any capital expenditures around the building, maybe it isn't. Calculate them for prep, migration, and utilization. What's the bottom line, and is it acceptable to you? The cloud is both complicated and rewarding. Take the time to answer all the questions that are relevant to your business in the cloud, and it'll help you bring the ROI you've been looking for. So I told you it would be a little short today, so it is. And Travis, I'm going to turn it back over to you, and we can see if we can answer any questions for people.
Sure. Perfect. Thanks, John. Great presentation. And let's see here. Do you want to go ahead and send that back over to me? Or I can take it. Never mind. I got it. I've got it.
Okay, you got it? All right. There it is.
You see my screen?
Yes, I see it.
Perfect. All right. Okay. So before we get into the Q&A portion of the broadcast, for those of you that do have questions, go ahead and if you want to submit those now, you can, so we can get those in the queue. But I would like to cover a few things before we do. And start off with our webcast today is part of GSI's free ongoing educational webcast series. So here there's listed below our upcoming webcasts, and they're listed, of course, the content and then the dates associated with it. And if you would like to sign up for any of these, just go to getgsi.com/webcast. And of course, if you have any questions, feel free to ask that as well about any one of these in particular. Also, our mailing list. If you'd like to sign up for our weekly email reminders for upcoming webcasts, or our monthly JDE newsletter, or to create an account to access our resource center, just go to getgsi.com, go to the bottom of the screen, and then click on the link for each, and then it will direct you, and you'll be able to create an account. So for those of you that do have questions, we're now into the Q&A portion of the broadcast. So please feel free to go ahead and submit those.
Yeah, I know there's a question from Carrie. It said, are we going to be able to send out the PowerPoint? Yes, absolutely. Oh, you already answered that, but I think everybody else should know that we will send it out. Travis, are you still there?
I'm here. I'm not seeing any questions that are coming in at this point. I can go ahead and start to do the final wrap up if you'd like, and then if anything comes in.
Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So, as a follow-up from today's webcast, we ask that you do the following. Upon exiting, if you would complete a short 1-minute survey, and in turn, you'll be receiving an email with a link to our resource center. And this is located on our website where you can access the recording from today's webcast, as well as a copy of today's presentation. And you'll also be in the running for a $25 Amazon gift card as well. So just one little bit of an incentive to fill out that survey. Also, if there are any follow-up questions, if there's anything that was not covered or that you do have questions about from today's presentation, please feel free to reach out to either to John or myself, and we will be more than happy to get those questions answered for you. Or if you have any questions regarding any of our services or anything else that might be taking place aside that may not be affiliated with today's presentation. Well, John, I don't see any questions that have come in, and I guess we can go ahead and sign off here. Thanks so much. It was a great presentation today. And
thank you.
And thank you to our audience members. Thank you for attending, and we look forward to seeing you here next time. Have a great week, everybody.
We'll see you.
Bye.
Bye.